I'm Alaning. I was Zorianna Kit, and today we review West Side Story. So here's my thing. The original West Side Story is a classic. I love it. I gave it nine and a half out of 10. Um, to me, watching the movie, I felt like it was like, what if we gave Steven Spielberg the Mona Lisa and told him to do something with it? And that was kind of the way I was watching this movie through the whole thing. I think Spielberg does elevate the original, but yeah, I'm just kind of curious. What's your thoughts on the original, and how did you feel about this remake?
Well, I have to tell you, I don't hate me, but I did not see the original,
Oh, okay,
nor have I seen the Broadway version
okay. Oh,
or
this will
any
be a fun one
version.
then.
Yeah, I never saw any high school students put on their version of West Side.
So you're coming in cold.
Yes, and honestly, that's just the way I liked it because going into this, I mean the chatter surrounding this film from people of already having an opinion of, well, the previous one won 10 Oscars and it's a
Yeah,
classic and this, that, and the other. There's so much. And I do understand the songs are iconic. I mean, every time they sang a song in here, I was like, oh my God, I know that song. Of course I
yeah,
know that. I mean, it's just these songs are all around you, whether or not you've seen the musical or not.
yeah. And now
Um,
you have the context for the song.
yes, exactly, exactly. Watching this film, to me, I there was this sense of awe and wonder from the standpoint that the film had very much the feeling of kind of this Hollywood glamour era. It was grand. The choreography was stunning. The composition, down to like the little percussion sounds hitting how the actors are snapping their fingers, all of
Yeah,
that was so precise and so on point, and really did create this stunning visceral experience, not to
yeah.
mention an emotional one too because of the actress, which we'll get into.
Yeah,
But
so
my
let me stop
Yes,
you there for a second.
okay, all
But
right.
the original, the exact same thing. It's the exact same feeling. There is a grand scale to the original. There is the choreography, the music, the orchestration. It was classic then, and it's classic now. So there's not, in terms of the quality, the musical is timeless. The orchestration, it was so great in the original. It couldn't be much greater in this one, no matter what you do to it.
Yeah.
And it's just as great in this one. And I think that's the biggest issue I have with the movie, is the fact that there are elevated elements in this movie that maybe nudges it up better, but it's still exactly the same movie. And
Okay.
with the exception of one song, the context of everything is still the same, and treated a little bit differently.
Okay, yes, and I know I know the scene that you're talking about, but
Mhm.
what did you obviously today's technology enables some things to have an elevated look to it
Yeah,
that maybe wasn't possible back then because of
yeah.
technology.
No, well,
What
that's the funny thing. Uh, I wouldn't say there's anything really elevated in terms of the technology in this one. The only thing that's really different from a presentation standpoint are the camera angles.
Yes,
The
the
whole
sweeping
balcony scene, yeah,
yes.
the whole balcony scene is shot from the bottom up, so you're looking up at Tony and Maria. Um, so, but in terms of, I didn't spot any CG. I didn't, they had cranes back in the 60s. They're really, I think what is really different about it is the Spielberg storytelling, um, mystique that he brings to it.
Okay.
Other than that, it's pretty much the same. The acting is just as good. I wouldn't say the acting was great in the original. I wouldn't say acting is especially great in this one. The singing, the exception here is the actors actually sang the songs
Okay,
versus
but were you expecting something to be different? I mean, were you expecting something to be were your expectations met? basically.
Yeah.
Did you
I
expect
mean,
something different?
I will say I was just as blown away with this as I was with the original. I think what I was expecting and I got was I think the cultural aspect, the Puerto Rican culture comes out, shines brightly in this version versus the original. One interesting thing is when people spoke Spanish, there were no subtitles, and so there were extended periods of me not understanding dialogue, but you got the meaning of that dialogue through the performance, through the
Yes.
emotion behind that
Yeah,
performance.
I loved that. And by the way, I would also figure that having subtitles on something as grand as that would have also been a distraction. You'd be too
Yeah.
busy doing that. And basically it also gave us a sense of how it would feel being in the room with them.
Hmm.
If you don't speak the language, you would be trying to figure out by their actions and facial expressions what is being said. And if you did know the language, I there were people who were laughing at certain parts that were in the Spanish language that I didn't laugh at because I wasn't sure exactly what was being said. All I knew was that it was funny to them, and that was great. Like, I really liked that. I loved
Yeah.
you could really feel the audience's participation in this. There were audible gasps when certain songs came on. There were certain people clapped when songs ended. There were these magical moments where a collective audience reacted to certain scenes that I
Hmm.
that gave me a really enjoyable experience in watching
Yeah.
this
Yeah, so let me talk about some of the Spielbergian
film.
elements that were brought into it. The opening number, where the jets are invading the streets of the Puerto Rican streets of Manhattan. Um, there are little things in the background that just kind of accentuate the action on screen. Some of the uh, there's car horns in traffic that time in perfectly with the music and the beat of the song.
Mhm.
There are the camera angles. We talked about that. The cinematographer, I think, is going to get an Oscar nod. The editor, I know, is going to get an Oscar nod. It's just a really good look. It's kind of like as much as it's a lot like the original, there are Spielberg moments that just really elevate it. There's elements of each dance that are just kind of accentuated, and I think he did the wise thing. Is he had to recreate the masterpiece that is the original, and then add, aside from the cultural stuff, add a little bit of his own influence into it, and it's noticeable, and it's much appreciated. It elevates the film itself.
Also, I'm told that the songs were rearranged to match the order of the Broadway musical, not the order of the feature film.
Yeah, and because if I remember, I hadn't seen the original in a while, but I believe "I Feel Pretty" happens near the front of the film, as opposed to right after the rumble scene,
Yes, yes,
which caught me off guard because I thought they had cut "I Feel Pretty," and then I realized, oh no, it comes after the rumble scene, which is interesting because here's this really light, happy song that comes right after the most tragic moment of the
yeah,
film.
yeah,
Yeah,
yeah. And also, it was fabulous to have Rita Moreno in this film because she was in the original, and they created this character especially for her in
yeah.
this film.
Well,
And
technically, they recast Doc to be Moreno's character, and
yeah,
and I will agree with you. One of the bright moments right up front was the song "Something's Coming," because in the Broadway play and in the musical, Tony just sings it walking down a street,
mhm,
but in this case, he's singing it in Doc's drugstore to Rita Moreno, who
yeah,
is the widow of Doc.
yeah,
And there's just this element that she brings to it. The look on her face as Tony is singing the song to her
yeah,
is just priceless.
yeah.
It's so heartfelt and heartbreaking in a way.
I really also felt that that it really the characters, were felt very humanized to me.
Hmm.
Oftentimes when you have a musical, it's you're already dealing in a more of a heightened reality, a more fantastical reality that sometimes the characters don't have that depth because all of a sudden
Hmm.
you have to break into a song and dance, right?
Yeah.
But here I felt, especially with our lead, our lead,
Ansel Elgort.
no, no,
Oh, Rachel Ziegler.
yeah, our lead Rachel Ziegler, she was luminous. I mean,
Hmm.
the camera just loved her face, and you couldn't stop staring at it. There was just something so photographically beautiful in her face, in her voice, the way she moved. Everything about that was just, it
Hmm.
was magical. I mean, what a find. She's just
Yeah.
a find. And
and
then
and and I think because we kind of fall in love with her throughout the film, it makes the ending moment with her that much more dramatic and tragic.
the two exciting characters to me were the supporting characters of Bernardo and Anita. Uh, they were charismatic and sexy and fiery, and the way they moved and danced and sang, like they were firecrackers. You just couldn't take your eyes off them either. You know, the Latino cast specifically in this film was top notch for me.
Hmm. Yeah, and that's pretty much, I think, why the remake was made, was to make it much more culturally sensitive, and say, okay, let's cast the sharks as Puerto Ricans. Let's, you know good news for white people, their roles are safe. And and but I think I brought it up in an article I wrote for at Film Threat. The reason the reason Disney is remaking all their animated features in the live action is to kind of take out the culturally insensitive aspects of it, and kind of correct things. And I think that's why this movie exists, if anything. And which kind of brings me to my big point of, did the original have to be remade? Um, Other than the cultural reason, my feeling is the differences between the two movies aren't that vast enough for me to say it should have been remade. Um, and that the greatness of this is slightly better than the greatness of the original. And so, I'm kind of like, I could, you know, in the end of it, at the end of it, you know, which version am I going to see from now on? I think I'm going to still see both, and depending on whatever mood I happen to be in at the time.
But why not? Why not remake it?
Why
That's
not?
my
Why not burn the first one?
no, 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 no.
Yeah.
Don't burn anything, but remake it for a new generation. You know, kids are so fickle these days. If something is some people won't see a movie just because it's in black and white, right?
Yeah.
So why
Well,
not? Why not
yeah.
introduce a
Well,
whole new generation?
okay. I get that point. The problem with that question is that outside of the cultural differences, there's not a great deal of difference between this and the original. The sets are fairly the same. Maria's white dress with the red belt looks exactly the same as the first movie. It's not to say it's a shot for shot remake. There's not enough difference to where you could say, "Oh, this is for a new generation," because they didn't really do that much different outside of the story.
So, Alan, then I don't get a sense of how you feel about this movie,
Oh,
though.
yeah. I mean, I feel as great about this movie as I felt about the original movie.
Okay.
That's and I like the updated feeling to it, but again, it's just as great. It's like, yeah, you give Steven Spielberg the Mona Lisa, he's going to give you back the Mona Lisa with a few highlights and accents to it.
Yeah. Okay.
Outside of that, they're still both great paintings.
Well, also, I just think it's, when you look at this film, you think, oh my gosh, Steven Spielberg has never made a musical before. Like, that's so odd, because looking at this, it feels like he's been making them his whole career. Like, he's comfortable in this medium, or at least he's surrounded himself with enough geniuses alongside his own genius
Yeah.
to create a really beautiful Hollywood glamour, gorgeous, well shot, directed, performed film. It
Yeah.
may, it may compete at the Oscars, and see similar success to its predecessor.
Yeah. You know, I mean, this is the question I walked out on, is just exactly what did Steven Spielberg do? Because he was given great source material in the first place. He was given a great example of the countless Broadway productions and of the original to be able to reproduce this in such a perfect way. You know, how can you not fail at this? And especially for Steven Spielberg, if he had failed with this movie, he should just retire from directing from now on. And unfortunately, he didn't. He nailed it, but again, it's like, you know, you had a lot to work with in the first place. It's so that's kind of these are the internal battles I've had while watching the movie, and
Well,
then
see,
walking away
luckily
from it as well.
I have no internal battles because I didn't
Yeah,
see the first one, and I thought this one was just fine. It was
yeah.
it was it
I would challenge you to see the first one and just see
yeah.
how similar it is to this one.
Okay.
I you know, yeah, okay. I was just gonna say that's a challenge I have with my daughter, because she's the exact same way. She, with the exception of the opening number, she has not seen the movie, and
Yeah.
so and she walked away liking it as well.
Yeah.
All
Yeah.
right, so yeah, clearly you loved it. I think it is it's right up there on the top of the list of best picture of the year for you. Um, I'm just curious what the others would be, but I have an idea. But I'm gonna say you liked it a lot. So I'll go as high as say a or a 9.5.
No, actually, no.
Oh,
Actually, not at all. For me, it was an 8.
okay.
I did enjoy it. Like I did enjoy it. But if you're talking about, well, you're curious to see what my other best pictures are. I do have. They're all so varied, actually, to be
I know.
honest with you. But
Yeah, that's for another one, but I think
yes,
Belfast is on there.
exactly. Yes, absolutely. Well, Belfast is on there for sure. Also, Nightmare Alley after seeing it last night. So, that list is ever shifting and ever changing for me. But I give it an 8 because to me, that's kind of where it feels like I liked it. I liked it a lot. I wouldn't like I I didn't love it, but I appreciate it a lot. I appreciate it a lot, and I think if you're not a person who is into musical or Broadway musical adaptations, if you want to get your feet wet and kind of jump in and try out some musical adaptations, I would say West Side Story is a great way to do it. Great way to do it. So it's an 8 for me. I I had a hard time trying to figure out what you would give it because I wasn't sure if you wanted it to be.
Well, I tipped it off earlier.
I know, but I know you gave it that previous one a 9. So if it's similar or almost the same, then you're giving this one a 9, right?
Yeah, I actually gave the original 9.5, and I give this one 9.5. I mean, I love this.
Wow.
I loved it. I mean, again, I've seen it before. It was, from the 1961 version, but it hit me strong this time. I think the cultural aspects that were added to it, I think does nothing but give it heightened texture.
And
Uh,
depth.
yeah,
And
and depth to the characters. Yeah, I mean, definitely the characters are much more fleshed out in this one. The
yes.
story is a bit is richer,
Yes.
but in terms of the musical itself and my love of West Side Story, it's definitely right there. It's that got a 9.5. This gets a 9.5. Not quite the 10, but which what is my 10? Casablanca is my 10,
Yeah.
and it's like I wouldn't want to give Spielberg a chance at Casablanca now. I just to me that's the perfect movie, and I feel like it just needs to be untouched. And okay, but we're not talking about Casablanca. We're talking about
Yes.
West Side Story. So, what did you think of West Side Story? Did you love it as much as I did, or is it just kind of overblown? Do you hate musicals? I think this one is. I think this is for a broader audience, like Chicago was,
Yes. Yes.
and unlike the other musicals that have come out this year. So, I think there's a broad appeal there. So, what did you think? Let us know. Like, subscribe, comment, and with that, let's get out of here.